My first question is, how did you start this documentary, and where did the idea come from?
I was working with Jean-Nicolas Reeves, who is the filmmaker, who couldn't be here, but we worked together on that movie for 7 years. I'm actually a researcher in architecture, and I've been working on the field of slums and squatter settlements since 1987, when I made my master thesis. And then I began to travel and to visit a lot of these environments. And I became interested in the squatter settlements the moment I realized that when you look at the plan of a slum or a squatter settlement, it presents a lot of analogies with the plan of the traditional villages of the area. So you could imagine or make the hypothesis that through decades of industrialization and modernism and Western urbanization, some very old knowledge about the way to make cities and to make village and to live together in a built environment have maintained their importance for these people. So when they travel into the city, they carry that implicit knowledge that is very specific and very singular to a culture and a collectivity, which means that you can almost identify from the plan of a slum the area it is located in, not only the country but almost the province. And it is as singular as a signature or as a fingerprint. This was a complete change because since centuries, even Descartes mentioned that the plan of traditional village looked like organized by randomness and chance rather than by rational thinking. But we know now that both in traditional villages and in slums, there is a very high level of organization, and this organization is extremely sophisticated and very specific to the communities that inhabit these places.
Is it a theory that government shouldn't be putting money into housing and that, but they should be working with people in these communities to help with infrastructure in the communities that people have been building themselves?
Well, the first and main important things about these communities is that there is no general rule that apply on the whole world, because they come from cultures and traditions and ways of living together that are extremely different. So you will never deal with an American slum the way you would deal with an Indian slum, for instance. And for years, for decades again, slums have been eradicated. Which is a very significant word, because what you eradicate normally is an endemic disease. I mean, the slum was seen as an urban pathology, something that should be healed and replaced by something clean and hygienic. But when you try, for instance, to remove a slum in India or in Brazil, you came with bulldozers and bulldoze it. The day after, it begins to be rebuilt on the other side of the streets. And facing this problem, as soon as in the 70s, some countries such as India passed some laws forbidding to destroy a slum unless the people in the area have accepted their relocation conditions. And when you begin to pour money, if you do not work with the people that live within the slum, you're doomed to failure. Because they know how they live together. These environments have been evolving for a long time. They are constituted collectivities, and there is a almost organic link between the social structure of the collectivity and the spatial structure of the village. Like for any city, you can almost read the patterns of power and authority and administration on the plan of the slum. So you definitely have to work with them and not against or not despite of them.
In the film, as you said, you guys were working on for several years. You visited lots of different places. What were some of the differences in the places? But however, what were some of the similarities in these places all over the world?
The slums are as different from each other as the city can be. only on the spatial pattern you would see, for instance, that some slums have like public spaces and some other don't have. Like in India, for instance, the collective life happens in the alleys, in the streets. Those there is no large space or very few. As for in slums like in Mexico or in Brazil, you will find some open space where people would gather and speak. The very conditions in which the slums are built determine to a large extent not only their structure but the way they evolve. And when I refer here to political or socio-economic conditions. Most slums, if you leave them to themselves, if you give them security of tenure, which is the basic conditions for a slum to evolve, in the lapse of time, which is about 20 to 40 years, they evolve to give rise to a consolidated urban neighborhood, because every slum wants to become a city. That's its unconscious ambition. And but for that, it has to be autonomous and has to be sure not to be thrown out. And one of the worst case we've seen is in Kenya, close to Nairobi. There are two big slums. One is called Kibera, and the other one is called Mathare Valley. And these slums, they never evolve, and they are the conditions are very harsh. And one of the reasons for that is that these are slums of tenants. Though the people are poor, they did not build their house, they rent the houses. And the houses are rented not to people from inside the slums, but from owners or landlords that are outside of the slums, and most of them are government officials. And these two slums are considered as one of the best real estate affair in all of Africa, because you build something, in 9 months you begin to gather money and to make money from it. So since these people are not owners, they do not respect their house, and they are in the slum is built on a layer of garbage that almost 1 meter thick now. And though when you go to other slums like in Mumbai or Bangalore, when we've been, when people own their house, they are very proud of it, and it shows. And in Bangalore, for instance, you will see that in the movie. Every morning, the women clean the house completely, clean the clothes completely. These people are incredibly clean. They have these beautiful dress and clothes with bright colors. There is no a single spot on it. And you're in a slum. They're maybe cleaner than a regular Western high school teenager, for instance. And when the house is completely clean, then they take some piece of colored chalk and they build a motif in the front of the house. This motif is called kolam, and kolam means welcome. Now the house is clean, you can enter. I'm proud to show it to you. That would never happen in something like Kibera, for instance.
I was wondering, you've been working on the subject for decades and then doing the film. How has your ideology changed from your initial work and perceptions to, say, now?
I had more like ideas and hypotheses about that, but I've been educated as an architect, so I was pretty convinced that most of these ideas would be confirmed by the research. I was open to change my mind, obviously, but when I came first in the slums, I tried not to have any predefined frame of thinking. I came almost as a wanderer. I came with no prior preparation, no frame of analysis, no question. I just enter and begin to wander and to walk into the slum and to speak with people, and mainly to speak with people, which is the most important thing, because usually when you think about a slum, you not necessarily think about the people that live in it, except maybe as like criminals or people that are sick or poor. They have reason to be poor, and gangs and all that. But I found very lively and human human-oriented communities and people willing to help each other and very welcoming people. And then when I began to enter the houses, I could see how the house was important. How even the symbols of the house were as important as the house themselves. One could think that in the slum, the poorest house would be miserable shacks, just something to protect you basically from the elements, from the rain and the sun or so on. But not only does these houses do not protect from the element, they are too thin, but there are a lot of symbols that make them house. Among these symbols, for instance, in Rio de Janeiro, there is this very known slum, now almost gentrified, which is called La Rocinha. And in front of the house, you see a number, like any address in any street, and you see an electric bulb. And there is no electricity in the electric bulb, and the number is completely random. It does not correspond to the others. But these are the symbols of the house that wants to be an urban house. It's more important than the reality of the electricity in it. And in about every Indian slum house, you see small icons, small idols, small hotels, which means that every house is like the little temple that you make to yourself and to your family, and which can be said about every house in the world.
How do you feel slums are going to evolve in, say, the next 50, 100 years?
I never studied the slum on the economic point of view, though it's a background that you cannot escape. But the thing is, at its own scale, the slum represents the circumstances that weight the whole mankind in a few decades. Like, we have to learn to live together in a space that is finite, it's not infinite anymore, and with resources that are finite. And we have to learn that. And I refer to the slum as a machine for living together with as little space as possible and with as few resources as possible. And for this reason, each of the slum has its own importance, because it represents one of the multiple solutions that mankind has found to try to answer that problem. And this is what I refer to in the movie as the urban ethnodiversity. We have to survey all these slums in order to survey all these small machines for living together and try maybe to find some elements of answer or solutions for what awaits us in the next decades.